For more on the conflict, let's bring in Justin Fulcher, former senior Pentagon official and former senior advisor to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. So, Justin, the president was about to launch what we understand were going to be major strikes. He has called it off, says he wants to give diplomacy a chance. What do you think of the move?
Well, I think President Trump did what any strong commander-in-chief would do. He'd leverage the U.S. military's strength to open up and create the conditions for diplomatic options to continue. And so I think ultimately, President Trump is wisely and only selectively using the military and U.S. force when required and not unnecessarily. So I think this is a wise choice by him to, allow diplomacy in action, but do it on our own terms.
There are some who are saying that this has turned into what the president has promised it will not be, a never-ending war. Former Assistant Secretary of State Mark Kimmett has some thoughts on that. Listen.
Patience is what the Iranians are using against us. They hear about we don't like forever wars. We want to get out of this quickly. We want to get this done quickly. But that's not how you defeat the Iranians. You defeat the Iranians by going patience against patience. If you say we want to get this done quickly, they'll just strap in their seatbelts and say, we win by not losing. We can take the bombing, you'll leave, and we'll have what we want.
But it's more than the bombing. It's, the blockade, and their economy is in a shambles. You have to wonder how long the Iranians are going to be able to hold out, but maybe they will surprise us. What do you think?
Well, I think, they've certainly held out, but so has the United States. But I think ultimately this has highlighted the importance of how the defense industrial base and the factory floor is really the key to sustaining longer-term endurance-based conflicts. And so ultimately President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have taken the lead on that, and tremendous work has been done. But this has taken a lot longer than I think some folks have expected, and that's shown the importance of American industrial might and how critical that is to sustain long-term conflicts, whether in CENTCOM or elsewhere.
Yeah, Senator Mark Kelly and other Democrats are also pointing to the length of this conflict and raising concerns about it. Here's Senator Kelly.
I think what we're seeing here is a president who has an approach to this that's just rather erratic. He says one thing, he does another thing. It's escalatory at this point. He's trying to get us back to February, and I think if he could bring our allies back together, he's alienated not only our GCC allies, but our European allies as well. And it's just making this much harder for him to figure out a way out.
So he's saying that, European allies and Gulf allies are alienated. Do you see it that way?
I don't see it that way. I think President Trump has been very clear from the beginning around what the goals of this conflict are, which is to prevent Iran from having any sort of nuclear capabilities, reopen the strait, and ultimately save American lives and protect American presence in the region. So I think that's a harsh criticism. That being said, President Trump is dealing with an incredibly complex situation here with Iran, and he's adapting in real time to a bad actor in Iran who, when they say something, they don't necessarily stand by those agreements and those ceasefires, and diplomacy is much more difficult with those sorts of actors.
Yeah, the Iranians have frustrated every American president for almost 50 years now. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had some thoughts on regime change. That's never been officially a stated goal of the administration, although I think everybody would like to see that. Here's Secretary of State Rubio.
I think what does it, the regime has to change. You may not have a regime change, but the regime has to change. The Iranian regime traditionally has been expeditionary. In essence, their view is they don't want to just govern Iran, they want to govern the region. They want to export their revolution. That does have to change. And the only way you're going to change that is if you make the price of it too high for them to be able to pay.
Do you get the sense that we are anywhere near that point? I mean, at what point do the Iranians say, okay, we'll sign a peace deal and we'll stick to it?
Well, I think certainly the U.S. military has been very effective in neutralizing a lot of the key and core threats that Iran has faced. That being said, I think the continued economic pressure and diplomatic efforts, all combined with the continued military strikes when required by the president, is pushing Iran to a situation where they will almost have no other option but to come back to the negotiating table and actually stick to a deal.
No question the military has done a great job, but they're still firing Shahed drones. They are still launching, attacks on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, I think, certainly those asymmetric threats are a constant challenge, and it's something where, as we've seen in Ukraine and modern conflicts, where cheap drones are an ever-present threat, and the U.S. has adapted quite well to those threats, but more can and should be done to, completely eliminate that